Hi, I'm Michelle Segrest, and welcome to the Factory of the Future podcast. This podcast is inspired by my 3-volume book series on the evolution of modern manufacturing. Each episode features engaging conversations with game-changing experts discussing the processes and innovations that are changing the landscape of modern manufacturing. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes and take just a couple of seconds to leave a review. And then go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a single episode. In this age of automation, there are plenty of robotics manufacturers. But where are the solution providers? If you want to know what the factory of the future looks like, just take one look inside Cobot Nation. This is 10,000 square feet of pure robot manufacturing. Not a single human in sight. I can't wait to hear more about this. And today, we're going to talk to Gil Mayron. He's a man on a mission to make automation accessible by innovating customized and easy to deploy solutions. But first, I want to tell you just a little bit about his company because it's really cool. It was just founded in 2020. Cobot Nation is an automation technology company that utilizes collaborative robots, or cobots. We're going to learn a little bit more about that term. They use cobots to automate physical processes across a variety of industries. Its mission is to make automation accessible by innovating customized and easy to deploy solutions. They work directly with their customers as the manufacturer, the integrator, and long-term support provider. And the company offers solutions that ensure a smooth and seamless transition to an automated operation. As a full-service solution provider, Cobot Nation considers itself the architects of automation. I can't wait to hear more about where that slogan came from. It's really interesting. So before we get started, I want to introduce you to our special guest. Gil Mayron is the founder and CEO of Cobot Nation. He is a pioneer of the consumer 3D printing industry as the founder and CEO of Botmill 3D, which manufactured and sold the first fully assembled consumer 3D printers. So even after Botmill was acquired by 3D Systems Corporation, Gil continued to lead corporate development strategies for the consumer division at 3D Systems. He composed the first ever licensing deals involving 3D printing with Sony, Viacom, NBA, DreamWorks, and many others. Now, I am so excited about this conversation. It is going to be a fascinating topic. So let's bring in Gil right now. Gil, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It's fantastic to have you here. This is really exciting. So when we first met and talked, you told me that you already had the Factory of the Future. So
yeah.
I want to hear more about that. But first, tell me a little bit about yourself. We said a little bit in the intro, but tell me more about who you are and your background and how you got involved in the 3D printing first. And then we'll talk more about how that transitioned to Cobot Nation.
Sure. So with 3D printing, I got involved very early on in a project called RepRap, REPRAP. And that project was headed up by a gentleman by the name of Adrian Bauer over in Austria. And when he came out with his first model of this open sourced machine, I'm not even sure that there was a name 3D printer associated with it yet at the time. But when he came out with that model, I contacted him and I asked if I can have the rights to go ahead and make on his next model, a fully assembled machine. I think everybody thought it was a monumental task, but we took it on and it proved out to do quite well for us. I'm pretty sure the first customers we had were NASA and Disney.
Wow.
If I remember correctly, like Disney Imagineers and things like that. But it was people who had the ability, even though it was a fully assembled 3D printer. I believe at one point we got the price point close to or below $2,000 at the time. Wow. Keep in mind, this was 2008, 9, 10. when I had my printer, even after selling it to 3D Systems, we still didn't have a section on Amazon at the time. And so we had to go and we created a new printer when we were at 3D Systems. That printer was called the Cube 3D printer, and we got that into retail. We got it all over the place. Did extremely well. 3D Systems now, I've been away for a while, so I left there in 2014. So I believe now they're concentrating a little more, at least from an outside looking in, it looks like a little more on the medical side. But no, that was my foray into 3D printing. I was very lucky to be able to work directly under the CEO for 3D Systems at the time. And we did roughly about something like 50 to 70 acquisitions over the course of not even 3 years. The market cap of the company went from, I think it was $500 million to roughly about $10 billion at a peak. And that only happened within like a 2-year period. So we were one of the fastest growing stocks at the time. I'm unsure as to where it is now because I obviously sold everything I had and moved on with life after that whole thing. After 3D Systems in 2014, when I left, I felt that was the appropriate thing to do. It was the end of my acquisition terms. And so there's only so much more anybody can do after that. I left. I consulted for a few companies. I sat on the board for Mosaic Manufacturing for a short period of time. They're based out of Toronto. They are a very unique hardware company in 3D printing, where they have the ability to take a few different strands of material and produce it into one strand of material at a very algorithmic rate according to the 3D model. So you can make full 3D things out of one strand of filament. I also did a lot of work for Polymaker out of Shanghai. I think they're now the largest 3D printer filament company in the world, and if they're not the largest, they're definitely on their way there. And then, once my non-compete ended with 3D Systems and things opened up, I decided to move ahead and to look into automation, and we found that it was a very similar path to what we took in 3D printing, and that is the following. 3D printing at the time when I got in, and the reason why an open source project was able to come out there is because the industrial patents had expired or were about to expire, the most important ones, the ones that allowed us to actually get into filament-based printing. Well, the same thing happened in robotic arms. So once the industrial patents expired, you start to see some PhD candidates come out there with some really interesting scenarios and modules to make different kinds of robots, and excuse me, and that's how universal robots came about. But even before they came about, we were looking into this quite a bit, and another main reason as to why we looked into automation is because for 3D printing is inherently slow. You only have so many ways that you can go about 3D printing. So it could be a piece of plastic, it could be a laser, it can be a projector, maybe some other ways, but there's only a few ways of really going, chemical, but there's only a few ways of going about it. And every method either involves a layer or a singular point that's traveling. So you're limited by time no matter what you do. You can try to speed it up, and if you do, it's only incremental. And so we knew a long time ago that we needed to get into automation. And when we realized that the industry was ripe for a little bit of disruption, we felt that was right. And so the disruption that we offer is the fact that not only are we the only U.S. manufacturer of collaborative robots and everything else that's associated with it, but at the same time, we also go directly to our customers. So most of our customers are Fortune 500 companies. That's just a natural progression. We still deal with anybody else out there, but most of them are Fortune 500 companies because there's nowhere else for them to go. And I don't say that in a leverage standpoint. I say that from a standpoint of, if I have a facility in Louisville, Kentucky, and I have a facility in Seattle, Unfortunately, with any other company right now, I on the planet with any other company, you're going to deal with a disjointed model. You're going to deal with a value-added reseller system. Good luck if you're actually dealing with the company that made the robot, which should give you a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth when support comes along.
Sure.
So yeah, no, we pride ourselves on making everything that we do from scratch. We design, we engineer, we manufacture. We have a 10,000 square foot collaboratory in Las Vegas. That's what we consider to be our collaborative laboratory. But no, I'll stop from there because I can easily keep going on.
No, it's so interesting. It's so interesting. I always wonder how people like you, when you see something like 3D printing or the onset of robots in manufacturing, how you know that's something there and that it's doable. Because it seems like, Jetson stuff. It seems like outer space stuff when you first hear that, for example, companies are making jet engines by 3D printing them. When you hear
Right.
about things like this, you just think this is impossible. How do you even say, yes, let's try that? Let's try to do something like that. So I always wonder about the mindset. Is your background more in engineering or what's your background? Like, how did you even get into 3D printing in the first place?
Sure. So my background is I went to Florida Atlantic University, and within, I believe it was the first or second semester, I had already left the university because I had started a freight brokerage company, and that came about by doing an internship at don't remember the name, somebody's facility in wherever my dad was working
Yeah,
at the time. That's
yeah.
probably how I got the internship. And I remember on the first day of the internship, they put a book on my table that said how to become a freight broker. Me being the, I don't know how old I was, maybe 17 or whatever. That was great. Thanks so much. Thanks for the information. And
Right.
so took that, made a few deals, and then went out and started my own freight brokerage. Within the first year, we had 50 agents working for us.
Wow.
And then I think internally in the office, we had about 13 people. And that was before I was 19 years old.
Wow.
So with
So
that
really
company,
you're really an entrepreneur. I mean,
yeah, no,
more than anything else, you're, a forward thinking entrepreneur. Is that how you
I
would
like doing, yeah, no, I believe that there is a method of going about things. I like to take on things where there's chaos. So at that point in freight brokerage, the name of that company was called No Wait Freight for the real simple purpose of not waiting to get a freight quote and not waiting for a truck and things like that. And we made a whole back end in order to handle agents. And but that fizzled out. For whatever reasons that was, I think we dealt with one large order of Christmas trees, and we were like a day late, and they burnt up, and it was like a whole problem. And I said, enough is enough, and so got out of that. But after getting out of that, we ended up taking. We had such a huge list of freight brokers, freight agents, and obviously on the other end, all the customers. We were one of the first people to ever advertise online. Would you like to get a freight quote? Would you like to get
Mhm.
a moving quote? And we would take that information and we sold those leads. And that's how we generated the capital to get into the 3D printer market.
I see.
3D
Okay.
printing came about because my older brother has a PhD from the time he was 23 in computer engineering. I am
Okay.
not an engineer.
Okay.
I am as
You're
far from an engineer as you can imagine.
you sounds like you're the businessman, you're the creative guy, you're the idea, you're the thinker, and maybe your brother was the mechanical architect type guy,
Yeah, no, he
engineer.
certainly opened the door to having me understand that there were 3D printers and other things out there. But once the Google alert came up for the RepRap project, it
Yeah.
was very clear that that was a consumer or desktop 3D printer. Excuse me. I was very well aware at the time that it's not going to land on everybody's home kitchen and things like that. It
Right.
was very clear, but at the same time, we used it to our advantage. We had an incredible backlog of orders from day one. We were the only ones doing what we were doing. And we were doing that for, I think we had a good year, 2 years almost with nothing, no competition.
Yeah.
And so that allowed us to get a backlog, which hurts in one way, but it also allowed us to time and acquisition accordingly. And so we sold the company to 3D Systems. That ended up turning out to be their consumer division. I headed up all the business development in there, and I did not want to do any more manufacturing. And it turned out to worked out very well. So it was a very good experience.
Yeah, sounds like it. Okay, so let's get into this. What exactly is a cobot or a collaborative robot? I think a lot of my listeners may already know, but explain it to me and those of us who don't know. So we know what a robot is. We can figure that part out. What is a cobot?
Sure. So the definition of a cobot is a collaborative robot. And the collaborative robot, for all intents and purposes, is supposed, as according to the definition that's out there now, it's supposed to have the ability to work with or without a human, or let's say alongside a human. Okay. The way that we go about considering collaborative robots, because there really is no set standard out there. You can have a reputable company put out whatever standard they think, and then I can come out with my own standard the next day, and you could take your guess. But look, if you run into a robot, you're getting hurt. So collaborative or not collaborative, it's still a robot. We consider collaborative robots to be a very large spectrum of things. So that can be an autonomous bin that we make that goes across one area to another, that may hold some clothes or something. That could be at that same function. That could be a Roomba, could be a vacuum cleaner. That is a robot that works with humans. But for us, it is a 6-axis robotic arm, which is a major lead generator for us. And so we go about making those robotic arms through modules. We go about doing all of our own software. With that, we're able to offer a completely customized solution to the customer, and the customer knows that there's nowhere else that they need to go. They don't need to go through an integrator, where integrators are typically very localized. They don't need to go through the reseller who couldn't care less about the integrator and only wants to make their margin on the commodity, when in reality, it's not a commodity. These are not things that are supposed to be set up by the person at the company. I think that's a very dangerous thing to take on. So we don't have our customers do install. We do all the install. We support it 24/7. So there's always somebody who's going to be around to answer anything. But that's the
you actually have real people answering the phone instead of robots.
We have real people answering the phone, and it would happen in an instant. It could be 2 a.m. and still somebody will answer.
That's fantastic. That's
but a cobot, that's really the way that we think about it. And a cobot in these days is a really good lead generator, in the same way that, advertising a consumer 3D printer in 2008, that was a pretty good lead generator.
Well, sure. No question.
When we get the leads, when we get the customer, no matter who the customer is, they may start with, I want to automate this, and I can see how this cobot can work for this application. I've got this guy sitting in front of this machine. I've got to switch him out every 4 hours because his arms are going to burn out. We have injuries. It's like a turnover every 3 weeks. We have somebody new coming in. And we have to keep it 24 hours a day because we can't produce enough. And so that's a great example on where we would put one of these collaborative robots. At the same time, we would also assess to the customer, is it worth it for you to spend the money on a collaborative robot, or is it more worth it for us just to create some simple system to do the task at the highest possible rate of speed, at the best possible safety aspect, and something that's phased to work with everything else in your company? And almost 10 out of 10, they all end up wanting to go towards full automation. Every customer we have is going towards full automation.
Okay. Well, we know that just about every industry can be automated, right? But not every industry or company has the resources to automate themselves. And as I understand it, that's where Cobot Nation comes in. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but help me paint that picture. So, can you tell us more about how you're helping these companies automate?
Yeah.
Are you making robots for them? Are your robots manufacturing something for them? Exactly what is going on in this factory of the future that you've got in Las Vegas, this 10,000 square foot facility?
Sure. So why don't I first talk about actually our facility for a
Okay,
second, so you
great.
guys can have a
That'd be great. We'd
good
love to
understanding
kind
as
of
to.
take us on a tour. Take us on a
Yeah,
virtual
yeah,
tour.
no, of course. So we are on the second floor of a building where you will not see our name outside the building. That's done on purpose. We work with one of the largest companies in the world. And so secrecy is a very, very big thing, especially if a company we're working with is unionized. So
Okay.
we're very aware as to how to go about things. Now, when you walk in, it's almost like a Willy Wonka type of situation. So you walk in, we kept it as a very Vegas theme. Erica Diamond, who's our creative director, she did everything. I have no design bone in my body whatsoever. I'll execute on a business, but but that's it. So all of the design, any pictures anybody can see on Instagram or LinkedIn, that all came from Erica and the mastermind behind it. But there was a reason for this. So you walk in, we have beautiful couches, we have beautiful offices, completely designed. Every wall in the office has a unique scenario, like the one behind me as well. It has a little bit of some gold in there as well. And then what happens is you open the door to one of the collaboratories. And in these rooms, first off, the rooms are completely shaded off. So the glass was completely tinted. And then when you go into the room, it's like going into another world. You have robots, you have overhead conveyors, you have engineers working on programs where the robots are moving in their own direction as others are doing other things. We have vision systems all over the place. We consider ourselves to be excellent at vision systems, which is very important to do these days with automation. But you would see that we are expanding our office as well. So we went originally from just under 4,000 square feet in year one, and now in year two, we're already up to well above 10,000 square feet. And we're already looking for probably something like another 5 or 10,000 square feet for additional fabrication space. So yeah, no, it's anyone who comes to our facility, they don't want to go because they're jealous that wherever they're going back to will never look as good as what we have. So that's the facility. But I don't
That's
want
pretty
to take away from
cool. That
your
sounds really
question. So
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But if you can go back and remind me what the other
Yeah,
question
no.
was.
So now that we have a little bit of a visual of what this factory looks like, so what exactly are you doing for your customers? Are you manufacturing things using robots, or are you manufacturing robots? Help me understand exactly what it is that you do for your clients.
Yeah. So the way that we work with our customers are this. First off, the majority of the customers that we get, even the largest publicly traded companies, have little to no automation. I mean, look, unless you're a car company, you've been dealing with the large robots for a long time. That's a different scenario. But the
Exactly.
majority of
Yeah.
companies out there, especially if you're service oriented, so you have a whole bunch of humans working in a factory, they're doing the same thing every single day. These are reasons for Cobot Nation to come in and take a look. So the way we deal with our customers are this. If you were to contact us, you would immediately be put on the line with an engineer. We do not go through a sales process, and I'll get into that why in later on. First off, it instills confidence, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're only giving solutions to the customer, because if we can't get to a solution, we can't take on the customer. That's just and it happens from time to time if it's not in our
Mm-hmm.
wheelhouse.
Sure.
But that's really the one thing that comes up. Now, when it comes to what we do with the customer, we'll go out to their facility. The engineer will go out. They will walk through the facility. They will start to list. They have a template with a tablet that they walk through with. They will list every single application that they can find. And then they'll go and they'll sit down with the powers that be. They'll go through the applications. This engineer is skilled enough where they can give answers to, well, here's how we might go about X. Here's how we might go about why. And, we've done this or we've done that, or, we haven't, and here's how we would do it, and all that kind of stuff. And we make sure that we get to a certain comfort level. Once the engineer leaves the facility, then we will go ahead, and usually it's within a 24 or 48-hour period, because the engineer is required to work on that specific customer until they get to completion. And so the engineer will come back to the office in Las Vegas. They will start to whip up a workflow. This is usually about a 6 or 7 page document. It's supposed to convey to the customer that we know exactly what it is that we are doing for that major application that we've decided on from that in-person meeting. Okay. So we'll never go and take on all the applications. We're highly against that. If somebody says, "Oh no, I want to do the whole thing at once," we're probably more skeptical than excited, and so it's because it's impossible. You need to start with a phase. You need to start with a little bit of automation, understand how it works, understand how your personnel reacts to it, let them feel comfortable, and that there's opportunity surrounding it, and then you can move on from there. But getting back to the customer. So with the workflow, we also do 3D CAD for all of our customers. And that usually we whip up in a 24 or 48-hour period. So the customer will receive the workflow. They'll receive, which shows them we have a full understanding, and they should be able to read the workflow and say, I know exactly what this robot's going to do. It's so clear, no problem. Then we do a review call where they get to see the 3D CAD. It usually also has a good depiction of their machine floor to the correct dimensions, by the way. So we make sure that we get that out of the way. And then it's just the quote and the ROI, so the return on investment template, which usually the customer will end up editing themselves later on to whatever makes sense to them. But what we can say is this: the entry level to get into your first automation application is usually in the range of about $40,000 to $60,000.
Okay.
And what that means with Cobot Nation is that you would get the arm, you would get the end effector, you would get the base, you would get engineering services, install and training, 24/7 support for 3 years, and all that would be included into that price. And so we don't know of anybody else who can compete with that. We routinely kick out any perceived competitors from companies that we're going after, and rightfully so. So, but that's really how we go about working with the customer from A to Z. And then the way that we do our payment terms, which is also something very important. So we do, if it's a new customer and it's a new application, so it could also be a repeat customer, but new application, because the majority of customers, if you're a manufacturing company and you do something with sewing, you probably have 100 sewing stations. You don't have one sewing station. And so we might automate the first one under certain terms, and then we could do the other 99 under other terms, because that's very easy. We know what to do. We don't need to manufacture that in our design center anymore. Now we can do that at the fabrication center, and so on and so forth. So, but the way that we go about with new customers with the payment terms are 10% down. Mm-hmm. And so it's very low. So if it's $60,000, that would be $6,000 down. We will go ahead and use our demo robots. And if we don't have the robot and we need to build the gantry system, we'll build it. It's no problem, because if you don't go through with the order, we'll use it for somebody else. And so we will build the entire prototype to the point where we can prove to the customer that we are doing exactly what's going to happen in their facility. The only thing we don't do during that phase would be if we 3D printed a component, when the customer approves, then we're going to go and get that made out of metal. Or then we're going to go and get that made professionally, or whatever the case may be. So it's 10% down. Then the customer will approve the prototype. Then we will start to schedule out installation. And at that point, it's 40% down. So we're just getting to the 50% mark. And at that point, our job is to install everything, make sure it's completely working for a considerable amount of time, not just a 1-day period of time. Our job is to train as many people that want to be trained as we're there. We'll stay out for as long as needed. Again, there's a 3-year support plan. So yeah, we'll try not to be out there long. It does cost us money, but we will stay out there as long as needed to get things done. And we never revise quotes. So when a quote is done for a customer, if there's something else that comes up that we did not see, we eat it, we take care of it, and usually it comes back to help us out because we'll get a repeat order and we'll go from there. But the repeat orders are 50% down, 50% upon completion, but that's also because the customer now knows that, okay, it's the same thing, we know what we're doing, we now need 5 of them and we're good to go. So we structured the business in a way where it's very easy for a customer to be onboarded. We do an immense amount of work, way more work than any other company out there that we know of. Very few companies will ever do any CAD or things like that. We immediately send our engineers out for on-site as long as we get the feeling that the customer is looking to move ahead on something. Even if it's introductory, we'll still go ahead and go out there. So yeah, and we are lower in price by I don't want to say exponential, but we are fractional in price compared to anybody else by a major degree.
Yeah, this sounds really interesting. I wonder if you could give us an example. Like, you may not be able to for proprietary reasons, but without mentioning company names, could you give us an example of how you help a customer? Like, maybe take the sewing machine example if you'd like to. So they have like traditional sewing machines, probably the industrial kind, they're a little bit bigger, and you go in and automate those and kind of eliminate the human element, and you outfit it with robots that do the work for them, and then when they see that works, you multiply it. Am I understanding that correctly?
You're understanding that correctly. Let me give a different example that might be a little bit more feasible to the audience. So, one of our customers is a company called Watts Water.
Yes,
Watts Water is a publicly traded company. They do, I think, the majority of corrugated pipes. Well, at least in the U.S. from what I know.
Yep.
And so they have a process where they have people who are sitting at what they call swaging machines. And a swaging machine is a machine where you have a whole bunch of die inside these machines, and they're pounding the end of a pipe in order to make it into a certain shape. And so these machines are very low to the ground, and a person can really only sit there for a certain period of time. And the way that it works is that person better be on their game, because it is put it in, flip it, put it in, get rid of that thing and move on to the next one. And so that's a great example where we came in and we automated that process. Now, keep in mind, in their line from a start to finish, that's actually like the end point. So, the pipe is done and now we're swaging it and it's probably going off somewhere else. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff which we can't talk about, but we're going to be doing for them. But just that swaging process alone, you could imagine they have many stations, and that's eliminating a number of shifts a day for a human. But it, more importantly, is eliminating an immense amount of liability for their company while increasing throughput by an exponential amount. So when we go into a customer, we're not just increasing throughput because we can match what a human does. That's easy. We like to go in there and really show what we can do if they were going at full steam. And that's also to allow the customer to go and, do what you need to do. Go get more sales. So
exactly. Yeah. So in your experience and with the clients that you talk to all the time, what do you think are the biggest obstacles that these manufacturers are facing when it comes to automation?
Excuse me. Sure. One of the biggest obstacles is fear. So many times when we're dealing with companies, look, the CEO can give a directive to anybody else in the company, go deal with Cobot Nation. I want to get automation, and so on and so forth. So I think the culture within a company is something that we have navigated quite well. And we're doing a pretty good job now at that. But that wasn't the easiest thing even 2 years ago. So, somebody would say, "Oh, I love automation. I want to get into automation." And then at the end of the day, it really didn't go anywhere. So fear is one of the aspects from a cultural standpoint. Now, you also have the normal things that come up. That could be throughput. So,
Mm-hmm.
can you make more if you automated?
Right.
Sure.
Right.
That could be safety. So, does that prevent me from having more liability insurance? Does that prevent OSHA from being on my case? What's happening there? And not only that, safety also includes wear and tear to a human body. So let's not forget that. And then, of course, you have the ability where because you're putting a robot, because you're automating, because you're increasing throughput, and the company knows exactly where their margins are going to increase before we ever do automation for them. They're very aware as to what they're doing. So because the margins increase, well, that allows them to do other things. And so we see them typically move more into automation, and then we see them start to really innovate their products once they start to get a handle on the manufacturing process. And just to go one step further, so Cobot Nation, we have so much expertise when it comes to, so we do everything from scratch, including the programming and software. We will work with a customer's point of sale system if need be. And so that's not a problem. We do it all the time. And so we can actually calibrate the robots and conveyors and everything to a flow of system depending on the kind of business that the customer has.
That makes sense. So you mentioned earlier that you work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and these are the companies that have a lot of capital and they have the ability to spend money on automation. Are there any solutions? We talk about this a lot on this podcast for smaller and medium-sized companies. They also want to automate, but maybe they have to do it in stages. How do you work with the smaller companies, or do you work with them?
Sure. Yeah, so no, we'll work with smaller companies. They need to show us that they're really serious in order for us to work with them, because with the Fortune 500s, these are very large scenarios. So we might be automating 400 or 600 facilities just in the U.S. alone.
Yeah.
And so not even counting other countries that happen. So, but here's what we can say. The larger companies, when you have something like COVID come around and you have a certain population of your personnel who really is just not showing up, it may not be everybody all the time, but it's certainly a percentage that's increased, that's not there as much as they were previously due to a lot of things, a lot of scenarios. Fine. And so the problem that happens is this: the large companies, they have the capital to say, okay, if somebody's not here, we need to move on automation right away. We need to start to get something in place. And you know what? We're not going to sit and hope that a storm weathers, because we are a $50 billion company, and there's no way the shareholders would go for such a conversation. And so, and on the other side of things, with the smaller companies, we're seeing something completely different. So what we see are companies who, if they lose personnel, their mentality is, well, why don't we wait for the storm to pass? And then that person will come back, and then my business will be right back to normal.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think this is one time in history where we are not seeing that end result happen. And we are seeing where people are leaving. They're not going back to the same place. And if somebody down the street from, the local CNC shop, if they automated, chances are they're probably about 18 to 24 months ahead of that other person. And that's just simply due to the fact of sales process and consulting and the prototype and installation, everything, right? And so, but once that happens, what do you think the company down the street is going to do? They're going to go and poach everybody that other person has, all the employees, all the customers, and I'm sure they know all the customers who they were ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that'll be the end of an immense amount of smaller companies out there. And so we're seeing a lot of that. So hopefully some can find a way to get their finances together so that they can get into automation. We are the lowest priced scenario out there by far that offers a full automation package. So if somebody comes to us, they don't have to do a thing. We will come in, get the whole thing done, and that's the end of it. But look, they're going to have to spend a little bit of money, and they're going to have to take the risk, and they're going to have to trust that when they're done, it'll allow them to go out and get more business. So it really depends on the owner. Can they get
They'll
more
have to
business?
face that fear too, right? That fear
There's the
of
fear factor,
what the
and it's
automation
really
looks like.
unfortunate. So yeah,
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 that's
a
cool.
lot of people base
So,
their decisions on fear.
so I want to go back to that first conversation we had where you said, I already have the factory of the future. And
Yes,
I think you definitely have a futuristic type factory. But let's pull out that crystal ball and look even further ahead into the future. What do you think the factory of the future looks like 5, 10 years down the road?
sure. So first off, I don't think you're even looking 5, 10 years down the road. I think you're looking at like 24 months at most. And even over here internally at Cobot Nation, we have a business forward program, which was headed up by our creative director. And that program is for us to introduce fully automated concepts in business that can then be picked up by anybody and then be implemented, because our job is not to run those businesses. Our job is to automate the businesses.
Gotcha.
But we have a lot of other ways about going about things in order to get that done. So, but I think I strayed away from the question there. So can you go back
Yeah.
to?
What does the factory of the future look like? What?
Okay. Yes. So the factory of the future to us is what we call hands-free manufacturing. Where, and again, we know of examples, we can't say them publicly, but we know of examples, very well-known companies, publicly traded, who some of them are fully automated to the point where they're creating $2 billion worth of business a year with one person in the factory. And nobody knows this, because if they did, I'm not sure it'd be a good thing,
Yeah.
but it'll be a good thing in the future. So we see complete hands-free manufacturing right now. Look, if somebody wants to adopt a robot so that it can work with a person, that's great. That's wishful thinking. But at the end of the day, if they think that person is going to remain happy working next to a machine, they're kind of kidding themselves. Excuse me. And they better start to understand that full automation is coming. And we have all the tools to do full automation right now. We have all the tools to connect every machine to a dashboard. We do that for our customers. And we have all the tools to make all the hardware that we need. We have an incredible agreement with SMC Pneumatics, excuse me, which is the largest component manufacturer out there. I think they're about a $50 billion company. And they make the solenoids for us, and we work directly with them. We engineer directly with them. They're another line of defense when it comes to support. And so this way, if anything ever happens to a customer on anything, we're able to go and replace it. But again, factory of the future is 100% just robots. That's where we're going. That's the way it is. We don't see a reason to have people for jobs that don't require iterative thinking.
I
And
think that some of my listeners will take pause when you make that statement, because they'll say, well, okay, are you trying to eliminate all of our jobs? Are you trying to get rid of the operators or whatever? And I think that fully automating a factory with robots, it doesn't mean eliminating all the people. It just means eliminating the people from those mundane tasks that can be performed by a robot. I mean, you still need people to program them. You still need people to come up with the ideas and the design and all the other things that are involved. So I don't think we're talking about eliminating people from the manufacturing scenario altogether, right?
well, I mean, look, let's be honest about the whole thing here. So first off, I mean, I can give examples of, horse and buggy to car, ATM and bank tellers, and they're still there. That's fine, and you're certainly going to have a handful of companies where they're not going to automate to the nth degree, and people will be there. But at the end of the day, look, the what we recommend to companies, because again, even with the largest companies, they don't know what to do with their personnel when they're automating. And so we do a few things. First off, the phase one is to make sure that the personnel can assist the robots in doing a better job. So we moved them to other points of the company in order to do that. Now, once those areas are automated, you would imagine that those people are a little more skilled at that point to help operate the robots. But again, we got to be honest with this. These robots are not going to need that much help in the future. These robots are going to be very self-sufficient. We're working on experiments where, again, we're directly tied into point of sale so that if there's an increase or a tick up through a cycle in the year, the robots will speed up and the robots will slow down. And this is completely without a human. And so what we think is that the next step is the wages for the ones who are left over. Well, that's going to increase dramatically. But again, what we should be seeing is an immense amount of innovation. You will see an immense amount of engineering jobs come out of this. Immense amount of design jobs, immense amount of manufacturing type of jobs, but it's going to be from a more complete standpoint. The engineers that we hire, they're incredible engineers. They can think outside the box. They can make anything, come up with these incredible ideas. But, when it comes to business, that's a different story. And executing on that is a different story. But, again, I think engineers will do well. I think that some jobs like farming and stuff will do well for the time being. Those are not easy jobs to automate at the moment. Even if you see a robot picking apples, it's great. They did it in one time at one company. And so, we still don't see it all over the place. But I think to be quite honest about it, look, people will work with the robots at the beginning. It's going to be short-lived as the companies see that they can make so much more as they automate more for such a low price. We obviously know the direction that they're going to go in, and it's going to leave an immense amount of population, typically the older population, without something to do. So something will have to be figured out over there. But for the younger people out there, there's no excuse. They better figure it out.
Yeah, I think that what I'm seeing is as companies begin to automate and replace humans with robots, it gives actually an opportunity for those people because they're allowed to upskill and to have some more training and to learn new skills that are much more interesting and much more exciting and much more innovative than what they were doing on the factory floor. And so we're seeing that a lot, that they're allowed to kind of grow with the company and do more exciting and more exceptional things than just the mundane tasks that you see on the factory floor that robots can handle. So I think some of the people out there are probably a little bit afraid of this conversation, thinking, oh no, we're not going to have a job. But I think the opportunity
Somebody's
there is to upskill, though. They have an opportunity to do something more and better and more
They
exciting.
have the opportunity now to upskill.
Yeah.
But if they don't make that transition and they're waiting around with hope that things go back to normal, I would say good luck. So.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I think we're going to hear from some listeners about that, but I think that's why we have conversations. That's why we have conversations like this. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to give you a chance to have the last word, and maybe you just did, but we'll let you just wrap it up. Is there anything else that you can tell us, or you want to tell the listeners about Cobot Nation or about the future of manufacturing from your perspective?
I think what I'd like to do is give a warning about automation. So if you're one of those companies who's sitting around and you can even have a small CNC shop, or maybe you have a whole bunch of painting booths or whatever, or you do welding or whatever the case may be, you absolutely should be looking into, if not collaborative robots, then a company like Cobot Nation, in order to figure out what your options are. At least understand your options, at least understand what it is, that goal you need to reach. Because again, this is very serious stuff. We're seeing it happen extremely fast. It didn't happen for the last 30 years, but suddenly now it's happening in no time. And again, same example could be made for 3D printing, where in 2008, 9, 10, fine, you had that little printer coming up, and then suddenly you had an immense amount of hype because the public companies got involved in it. And you're going to see a lot of stuff happen over here in that respect. And so, again, if I were a smaller shop, whether I have the money or not, contact us. We work with people. That's no problem. But you absolutely need to figure out if automation is right for you. And if it's not right for you, maybe it's time to figure out an exit strategy for your company. So.
Okay, that gives us a lot to think about. This has really been a fun conversation, Gil. I appreciate so much having you here. Thanks for your time, and thanks for being here. It's been fun.
Thank you, Michelle. That was great. Yeah.
This brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. If you have interesting information to share and want to contact me about being a guest on a future episode of this podcast, please send me an email at michelle@navigatecontent.com. You can also send me questions that I will have my expert guests answer for you on a future episode. And in the meantime, please check out my book series on modern manufacturing to read more than 30 real-world case studies about how global companies are using smart technology and innovation to build the factory of the future. All the links to the books and articles mentioned in this podcast are in the show notes. Have a great week, and please join me for the next episode of Factory of the Future.